to wing, brothers! Keep up with me if you can!
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mangs, and at long last I bring you guys the first official spotlight of 2017. It is time to bring you guys a character which has been heavily requested. Today we take a look at the King of Hawks, the savage, rugged, and powerful Tibarn. Tibarn is the Hawk King of Phoenicis, located in the southern seas of Tellius. In terms of his backstory, we actually know precious little. He is hardly present in Path of Radiance, and Radiant Dawn lacks any support conversations whatsoever, meaning we have no windows into his past. Tibarn also plays a rather small part in the main plot of both stories, and we don't really get to see anything regarding where he was born, where he grew up, or anything else, aside from the few lines of dialogue he has in the game itself. We only know that he is the King of the Hawks, and that he basically raised and protected the Heron Rayson like one of his own after the Serenes Massacre. In terms of how Tibarn became king, we have no idea how the Hawk Laguz select their leader. The Beast and Dragon Laguz both seem to have some sort of hierarchy, but we see no signs of such a system within the birds' communities. Since we never see any of Tibarn's family throughout the two games he's part of, we can assume that maybe he was chosen to be the King of the Hawks based solely on his strength. Tibarn is frequently accompanied by his two aides, Janaf and Ulki, who function somewhat similar to royal retainers, with Janaf being his eyes and Ulki being his ears. Not that Tibarn seems to have any need of such help, but I guess they're nice to have around. While we have no information regarding his past prior to Path of Radiance, we do know that after the events of Radiant Dawn, the Hawk and Heron tribes is unified into one tribe, and Tibarn is made its leader. Similar to his hawk brethren, Tibarn stands quite tall and muscular, with tan skin and a set of brown wings on his back, revealing his Laguz heritage. He has black, unruly, spiky hair that goes down to his neck in length. His attire while in humanoid form consists of a green vest, white pants, and brown boots, while in his Laguz form he takes the shape of a giant brown hawk. While most Hawk Laguz usually do not retain any of their accessories while transformed, Tibarn still has his necklace, visible in his hawk form. Tibarn's personality is quite straightforward. He's unrefined, tough as nails, extremely loyal, and incredibly brave. He can be quite reckless, but not to the point where he dives into situations without thinking. He is kind and compassionate to his friends, but ruthless and savage towards his enemies. He's also not the kind of person to forgive and forget, and can harbor grudges over long periods of time. Tibarn has a very shaky relationship with the Raven King Nesala, and seems to harbor mistrust for the Raven Laguz in general. He also has an initial great disdain of beorc, mainly those from Begnion, though that attitude is somewhat changed after he meets Ike, whom he harbors a lot of respect for. We also learn through a support conversation between Ike and Rayson that Tibarn's favorite food is cold fish, insects, and raw meat. As a unit, Tibarn is playable in both games. Let's talk about Path of Radiance first, where he shows up in the last chapter. Depending on the difficulty you play on, he will be available from the start of the map on easy and normal mode, or if you're playing on hard mode, he will only show up after Ashera has gone berserk. You have to choose between Tibarn and two other Laguz, Gifka the Tiger and Nesala the Raven. Most players would agree that Gifka is the best choice for strictly dealing with Ashnard, as he has the highest damage output of the three Laguz. If you are playing on easy and normal mode, however, Tibarn will arguably be more useful as he has superior mobility and can travel around the battlefield much easier. It is worth noting that while Ashnard is wearing blessed armor that can only be damaged by legendary weapons, Tibarn can, for whatever reason, still hurt him with his beak, and this also goes for the two other Laguz you get to choose between. Stat-wise, Tibarn is strong in almost all areas. He will easily eviscerate anything he comes into contact with, and thanks to his high avoidance, even enemy archers won't really pose much of a threat against him. And you can pretty much feel free to let him take out entire packs of enemies by himself. Coming in at level 18, Tibarn has 2 levels to grow, and his growth rates are actually not that bad, though you will only really get a chance to level him up on easy and normal mode. If you feed him enough kills, he may be able to get some extra stats before the final battle against Ashnard. On hard mode, however, it is very difficult to give him any experience whatsoever, since he only shows up after Ashnard is defeated for the first time. Though, if there are any leftover enemies remaining on the map, he might still get enough experience to level up at least once. This is usually more trouble than it's worth, however, as it's best to just get Tibarn straight into the action immediately to help Ike. While Laguz normally have to build up a transform gauge in order to enter their true forms, Tibarn comes with a Laguz band, which allows him to stay untransformed indefinitely, giving him a huge advantage over other Laguz units. Tibarn comes with 2 skills. Cancel is basically Big Shield from the previous games, and gives him a 36% chance, while transformed, to negate any damage taken. This skill is hardly noticeable, since Tibarn's avoidance is so good he will dodge most incoming attacks anyway, but it's a nice skill to have nevertheless. Savior, on the other hand, allows him to rescue any unit and carry them around with him without suffering any stat penalties. This is a great skill to have against Ashnard, as Tibarn can pick up Ike and carry him to safety without risking a double attack in his back. Regardless of what difficulty you are playing on, Tibarn is considered a solid pick. While Gifka certainly can do more damage against Ashnard, Tibarn's mobility and rescue utility makes him just as valuable. Moving over to Radiant Dawn, Tibarn doesn't become available until the late game. He is mandatory in chapters 2 and 5 and part 4, and like all other units in the game, he is available for use in the endgame. When deciding who to take with you into the tower, Tibarn is absolutely a candidate to consider. While there's a ton of amazing units to choose between in Radiant Dawn's late game, including the ones you may have trained up yourself, Tibarn stands out as one of the strongest, if not the strongest characters available. He may not hit as hard as Kainigus or be as quick as Naysala, but he is perhaps the most mobile, hard-hitting unit in Radiant Dawn, and honestly, you ought to bring as many of the Laguz Royals as you can into the tower anyway. Stat-wise, Tibarn has amazing strength, skill, speed and defense, with his luck being average and only his resistance being somewhat low. He actually has 9 levels to grow in Radiant Dawn, but his growth rates are greatly reduced compared to Path of Radiance, with only his hit points, strength, luck and defense having a good chance of going anywhere. His other stats will mainly stay the same unless you are really lucky, but regardless of that, it won't really affect his performance in any way. Just like in Path of Radiance, there are very few enemies who will survive a single round of combat against Tibarn. Some bosses might live to actually retaliate, but most every single generic goon will quickly fall to his powerful attacks. He functions kinda like a fighter jet. He comes in fast, destroys his target, and then moves on before the enemy can respond. Tibarn is not invincible, however, as Radiant Dawn has a new type of ranged weapon, the Crossbow. Normal bows, while still effective against him, usually don't even scratch him due to his high defense. But since the Crossbow does not get modified by strength, its base damage is insanely high to compensate, and when tripled due to how effective damage works, even generic enemies wielding crossbows can kill Tibarn in a single hit. Furthermore, the Crossbow can even retaliate at close range, so be on the lookout for enemies wielding these weapons, and don't attack them with Tibarn unless he can reliably kill them in a single hit. Luckily for you, enemies wielding crossbows are very rare, but there are a couple in the late game after Tibarn joins, so make sure you check the enemy's inventory at all times. Also be on the lookout for sages wielding wind magic, as Tibarn's mediocre resistance will make him an easy target for such enemies. Like with a lot of other units, Tibarn's skill set in Radiant Dawn is a lot more advanced than in Path of Radiance. He still has his Savior and Cancel skills, with Cancel now being named Pavais, and they work just like in Path of Radiance, allowing him to rescue his allies without penalties, and sometimes allowing him to shrug off damage like it's nothing. Tibarn's Laguz band from Path of Radiance is now replaced with Form Shift, a skill shared by all Laguz royals, which allows him to stay transformed indefinitely, giving him an edge over all the other Laguz characters, even if they somehow have surpassed him stat-wise. While you have items such as Laguz gems available in the endgame, Tibarn still has an edge since he starts out transformed immediately, whereas the other Laguz have to spend their first turn activating the gem. The skill Canto allows Tibarn to spend his remaining movement points after attacking, and this gives him a ton of mobility, and is very good for picking off enemies before retreating to safety. If you play correctly, Tibarn should never ever be placed in range of anything dangerous using this skill. Lastly, Tibarn comes with Attire, one of Radiant Dawn's many one-shot skills. Since it procs off his speed, you will see it activate quite frequently. It triples his strength and reduces enemy speed by half for one turn. There's virtually not a single enemy in the game that can survive a hit from Tibarn once the skill activates, and those few who could all possesses the Nihil skill anyway, and won't be affected by it. While Attire does have a secondary effect, you will probably never ever see it in action. At the end of the day, regardless of who you have trained up for the tower, you'd be an idiot not to give Tibarn a spot on your team. Unless you intentionally do not want to use any of the Laguz royals or want to give yourself a challenge in some way, there is literally never a reason not to field him. Just keep him far away from enemy crossbows and the King of Hawks is sure to tear your enemies apart. Thank you for watching this character spotlights. If you enjoyed it, please consider leaving a like and a comment. It really helps out this channel a lot. If there is a specific character you'd like to see me cover in a future spotlight, let me hear about it in the comment section below. But do make sure you check out my playlist by clicking the link on the screen, as I may already have covered your favorite character. Below are also some of the other spotlights I've done that you can check out by clicking on them. The amazing art and wallpapers you see used during these spotlights are made by my designer Mina Tangerina. You can visit her page or Instagram by clicking the links in the video description. She also has a stream where she occasionally draws stuff live, so make sure you check out that as well. I'd also like to thank my two script readers, Nasiro and Max HP, who helped me out with the fine-tuning of the script of the spotlights. They have YouTube channels of their own, which you can visit by clicking the link on the screen. At any rate, my name is Vidmangs, thank you for watching my videos, and as always, I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye.